right, we're live and welcome Seth to the Vitrina podcast. Pleasure to have you here today, speaking to the overall Vitrina community. Just by way of background, Vitrina is currently being used by a host of professionals, close to about 48,000 on a monthly basis around the world. And one of the key aspects about the Vitrina community is that they are all in entertainment. They are all playing a role in the entertainment supply chain. They are all business professionals in a highly entertaining content industry. And they're very curious about what's happening in Hollywood. And you are Mr. Hollywood, from a professional sense. With all the hats that you have, as part of your background and career. Really happy to and pleased to welcome you today to speak to the Vitrina community. One of the places that I'd love for us to start is if you could maybe talk a little bit about your background and a brief introduction to the community in general. I know you have at least three hats right now that I know of, whether it's the Hollywood Partnership, the HPA, and Light Iron. Over to you, Seth.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Atul. I really appreciate it, and I'm more than happy to share my views. I appreciate the introduction, the Mr. Hollywood introduction. I wouldn't quite go that far, but I do live in Hollywood. I work in Hollywood, I'm again, happy to share those perspectives, and hopefully that's valuable to your community.
Fantastic, fantastic. So
Yeah, I guess you asked me for their background. I guess for the last 30 or so years, I've been in media and entertainment. I studied radio, television, and film at the University of Maryland. But out of school, got involved with other things, building businesses in other industries. Got kind of did my own version of an MBA, so to speak, and just really trying to understand the mechanics of, how do you build businesses, how do you manage people, how do you maintain and build and maintain performance. But really wanted to go back to what I was originally interested in, which is really the core of stories, and I'm passionate about storytelling, storytellers, and later realized my passion is in enabling storytellers. And so I'm currently managing director of Light Iron, which is a post-production company owned by Panavision. And I'm also president of the Hollywood Professional Association, which is the trade organization for production and post technology, and the people in that are truly the technologists and the creatives in post and production.
that's right. Fantastic, fantastic. HPA is a big name, tracking all the major developments in production and post, both from a technological perspective as well as changes in business models. And incidentally, Seth, I know you had your big awards night this week. How was it? I'm curious to sort of see you perhaps sharing a little bit about what happened behind the scenes, and then in general, what was the major theme for you for the night?
It was a fantastic night. The post production industry and the community, the people that are part of the post production industry, really had a challenging year, to say the least, with the strikes. I know we want to talk a little bit about that today. Really, in a way, the timing of this award show couldn't have been better. The strikes, the actor strike just ended several weeks ago. So Tuesday night was really an amazing night of celebration for this community to come together and celebrate the great work that this community was a part of creating some of the world's greatest stories of the past year. And it was such a fabulous night. The Television Academy hosted us, and I just can't say enough about it. The crowd was extremely animated and energized about being out and helping us celebrate the artists, and the artists were all there to accept their awards, and it was such a deeply meaningful moment, not just for those award winners and nominees, but also for all the people that were there to celebrate that.
Fantastic. That sounds like a fun event with all the key professionals across the production and post supply chains, right? Fantastic. Um,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yep.
Fabulous. So, one of the things, Seth, that would be really great to sort of talk about is that, I mean, look, the last 3 or 4 years have just been, one thing after the other. I mean, there was COVID, and that had a massive impact on Hollywood in a big way. And then we, of course, had there was this big spike of activity last year. 22 seemed like a dreamland now from where we are today, right? 22 had all kinds of productions getting greenlit. It was a pretty heady sort of year. It's perhaps was the biggest year that Vitrina has tracked in terms of all the deal activities and the productions that were greenlit. But and then of course 23 has brought in a lot of changes. I think the financial markets, the multiple wars that we are seeing, and that obviously is causing some turmoil. And then the Chat GPT, of course, and this whole speculation of where Gen AI was going to be. And then of course now you've got the strikes, which typically lasted at least 5-6 months. So talk through a little bit about just how these 3 years have been, and then especially from your vantage point, as HP as well. What's been the challenge during COVID, and then what was the challenge now with the strikes? Would be great to sort of understand that aspect.
Such great questions, and
Yeah.
there's so many interesting answers to those questions. In a nutshell, COVID, the shutdown to COVID. I want to be careful when we talk about COVID because COVID was a health crisis and people were very sick and many people died. But when we talk, so I'd like to talk more about the shutdown of productions that were related to that pandemic. And so when we think about the impact on our industry, obviously it impacted almost every industry. But when we think about how it impacted the film and television industry, obviously it shut down. It shut down all the productions around the world. That never happened. You had thousands of productions that literally stopped,
Right.
and and very quickly, it was amazing to see how the industry, the global industry, the global community of filmmakers came together and tried to figure out how to meet the real health concerns. How can productions resume in a way that enables healthy environments so people don't get sick and transmit those diseases. And it was amazing to see that kind of collaboration and execution of those health protocols. And that happened pretty quickly, actually, when you think about it. It took a couple of months, but some productions were going back were spinning back up in the summer. And then, obviously, we saw real meaningful volumes hitting at the beginning of 2021. The other thing, in addition to the health protocols, was to see how remote technologies were really enabled, and there's an old TV show in the States called MacGyver, which was the hero of that show would always figure out how to save the world with whatever little objects he had around them, whether they were toothpicks or paper cups. And so it was funny to watch how there were people would refer to MacGyver in this situation where it was just the global production industry MacGyvering their way through figuring out how to resume productions and post in remote environments. And therefore, those remote technologies really accelerated out of need. And remote was already trending. In fact, the HPA Tech Retreat in February of 2020, just weeks before the shutdown, literally, the whole super session day was about remote workflows. Little did we know how relevant that would be only weeks later. And it was very relevant, and those remote technologies really accelerated. And fast forward to today, we now have these advanced remote capable technologies that offer lots more options for folks in production and post to do their work. There's a lot of people that like to come into the facility still and work with filmmakers in person, people collaborating in person. But now, in case if there's ever a need, or somebody's in another part of the country, another part of the world, or maybe some people that actually, get sick and they don't want to, come into somewhere and get somebody sick. They have options to be able to do the work remotely, and so that's it's interesting to see how these situations help accelerate
And a
technologies,
lot of these,
and so that's a take. Yep.
a lot of these remote technologies now have become so mainstream. It's just fascinating that it's actually sort of dented the baseline of where those remote technologies were pre-COVID and where they are now today. That's right.
That's exactly right, and they're accelerating even more. They're maturing even more, and in fact, now when we think about what's been happening in the last year, so you're right, 2021 and 2022, at least the first half of 2022, were very meaningful in terms of the volume of productions that were coming through. We started to see a bit of a drop off in second half of 2022, leading up to the strikes this past year. But when we think about the impact of this shutdown, so yet again, on May 2nd, the Writers Guild went on strike, which shut down most of episodic productions. Certain feature films were able to stay in production because the scripts were already written. But then in July, the actors went on strike, and that basically shut everything down.
Right.
What happened there is when we look at the components to both the impact of this shutdown, and then where that helps us how that helps us drive decision making into the future. You touched on a few of those things. We think about, well, there's a global economic, a challenged environment in the global economy.
That's right.
And then the studios have really struggled with their economics on content creation, distribution, and consumption.
That's right.
The streaming model has been something that's been uniquely challenging to many of the traditional studios.
Right.
And that is part of the reason why we stayed in why the strikes lasted so long and shut everything down for as long as they did. So in many cases, the strikes were a symptom of a bigger problem. A lot of people like to blame the strikes for the shutdown. Well, not really. The strikes were a symptom of a bigger problem, which was this economically challenged environment of content creation and consumption. Those models have changed massively. When you think about, for decades, you had linear programming that was sponsored by advertisers. And you had box office that was doing really well for almost 100 years. And then the 80s came, and you had cable television, which was incremental, and you had VHS, and you had DVD, which was incremental. And obviously, some of the biggest box office performance that we've ever seen through the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and then Blu-ray and UHD Blu-ray. Fast forward to today, look at the landscape. We have a challenged box office. The pandemic kind of disrupted that in a big way. Ancillary sales of DVD, Blu-ray, VHS, not as meaningful as they were. cable television, advertising, all of those are in a much more challenged state and kind of left with this all you can eat streaming model, which really just hasn't stabilized yet. And anyway, that's my kind of view of it. I know there's a lot more to it, and there's people that are much smarter than I am working on these problems, but that's sort of the way I see it. So when we think about global economic challenge, supply chain economic
Right.
challenge, but then we also look at what we just talked about, remote ability, this notion of cloud-based collaborative environments that we've been talking about cloud for a long time, but it's really reaching this next stage, I think, where it's not just, off-prem or putting things in a cloud. It's about compute in the cloud, and it's about really collaborating in these cloud-based environments. Automation, in the cloud. I think it's really advancing. And then finally, unrelated to all of what we just talked about, you have this AI wildfire vectoring in. And when we look at all of those things, we see fundamental transformative change happening in the supply
That's
chain.
right.
At the same time, enormous opportunity to be a part of of helping with the change and finding a sustainable way forward for at least our supply chain and for to solve some of those bigger problems around content production and distribution economics. We see massive opportunity. It's going to take some time, but we're looking at all of these things as certainly challenges, but riddled with opportunities if you look at these things in the right way.
Fascinating, fascinating. Seth, that was incredibly powerful. One of the things that I really, I mean, I was seeing the movie in my head as you were speaking about the fact that a lot of these businesses in the 80s and 90s were all additive, whereas everything that we've seen in the last 5 years has been like really cutthroat in terms of business model challenges, monetization challenges, and just the exit of certain sort of constituencies, whether it's box office, whether it's pay TV. There have been some constituents who have been walking out into streaming, which is still not fully stabilized from a monetization perspective or a business model perspective. That was a very, very powerful commentary. I wanted to actually double click on a couple of aspects on this piece, right? So we were looking at Vitrina tracks on a daily basis all the IP and development deal activity and transactions. We also monitor the productions and production green lighting worldwide. One of the things that we were seeing, just a comparison between 2023 and last year, 2022, was that quarter one was about 15% down. So quarter one, even without the strikes, already started 15% lower than 2022, right? For a variety of factors, including the whole debt crisis, financial markets, wars, and then of course Netflix's stock price towards the end of last year dented a little bit of their momentum as well, right? Uh, by quarter two, we had already seen close to about a 35% drop, 50% drop after the strikes came in. So starting June, July, we were seeing almost 50% drop in productions globally. So overall depression from that perspective. And by the time we are sort of looking at October, November, productions are sort of down almost about 65% from 2022 levels, same time last year. So just staggering, the downturn and the shutdowns. What really happens with the companies that are typically sort of in Hollywood during this particular period, right? They have thousands of people, or if not hundreds of folks, who are typically employed. When no production happens, no green lighting happens, no shoots are happening. I mean, describe that a little bit. Just what have you been hearing the last 3 or 4 months? A host of folks who are not in Hollywood and not in the United States. I mean, they would love to sort of imagine a picture of how that is. Was it kind of like COVID times, or was it even more deadly? in terms of its impact?
It was much more difficult and challenging than the shutdown caused by the COVID pandemic, much more disruptive for a number of reasons. I mean, the first easy reason is that there was no relief. You know, at least with COVID, the federal government supported individuals and companies in very meaningful ways. These forgivable loans and funding that companies could get and apply for were massively helpful, and then even individuals were able to get their individual checks
Right.
here and there through the shutdown. In this case, there was no relief, so it was shutting down all the productions, putting companies, putting individuals in situations where their work stopped overnight and there was nowhere to turn. There was no relief, there was no funding, there was no help or support whatsoever. So just imagine there's a world where you could be a freelance editor or a freelance VFX artist. You've been doing this for many years, in some cases decades, and you've got a great reputation, and you've done amazing work, and you've worked on some of the biggest shows. And one after the other, you finish one project, you get one, and life is good for a really long time. And these individuals have built, great lives for themselves, and they have families, and they have kids, and mortgage payments, and imagine that overnight you have no work. You're a freelancer, and you can't collect unemployment or anything like that. You just don't get paid. And that has never happened in the history of Hollywood and
Wow.
entertainment, that all production shut down like that with no relief. And we estimate tens of thousands of individuals just in LA, Los Angeles County alone, fell into that category. Then you have companies, and these companies, post-production companies, VFX companies, sound companies, production companies, they're built to thrive in a world where there's an abundant volume of productions to work on, so that post-production companies can bid on projects, multiple projects every day. They're constantly, giving bids on projects. You win some, you lose some, but at the end of the day, you're able to build a sustainable business. That shuts down. So although most companies had a little bit of work to work on, some things that were already shot, and you could continue finishing those things, it very quickly turned into a situation where a lot of these companies had to cut major costs, and that meant furloughing or terminating many employees. That meant cutting pay for existing employees in very meaningful ways. Never have we seen anything of that magnitude. And now fast forward to today. Okay, the strikes are over, but post-production is post-production. It's after production. So today, most of that work has been worked on, right? And now even though there's light at the end of the tunnel that the strikes are over, but it's a very long tunnel. So it's not going to be for a number of months, really at this point, late spring, early summer, until there's really a meaningful amount of volume going back to that high volume, sustainable business that all these companies are built
Right.
for. And it is pretty easy to state that nothing will really ever be the same again. This has really changed and shaped the supply chain in a way that will really look a lot different when we're up the other side of this. And we're spending a lot of time trying to figure out exactly what we mean by that. But like I said, it is very challenging. This has been very disruptive. But change is part of life. Change is part of evolution and technology, and we we at the HPA and also as head of Light Iron, we look at this whole thing as where are the opportunities? And there will always be content. There will always be stories. It's in our DNA as human beings to want to be immersed in amazing stories, and it's in our DNA to want to tell these stories. And as long as that's the case, there's always going to be a business for us. There's always going to be a supply chain, but it's just going to
Different.
be continually much different. And the goal is to look for those opportunities and help be a part of that
That's right.
change.
That's right. No, absolutely echo that sentiment. And again, a very powerful message right there. Seth, I know that the HPA just had all sorts of things going on in terms of its own initiatives for its own members and for the industry in general during this particular shutdown. Again, describe that a little bit for our members, just in terms of, some of the steps that you had to do. I was struck by something that you said the last time that we met, was that, there was a fair amount of government intervention as well that was required to sort of, besides a host of other initiatives that HPA was taking. But it would be great to sort of get a little bit of that understanding as well.
Sure. Well, so we saw a few motions that the LA County Supervisor's Office was putting forth for some relief funding for individuals and small businesses. But in those motions, we saw where they were acknowledging production workers, so people that worked on set, hair and makeup and catering and people like that. And then they started talking about other sort of collateral damage to businesses like cleaners and restaurants around town. And we were like, whoa, 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 wait a minute. What about all the post
Right.
production people? And so we started to get a little concerned that maybe, hey, because we know post production are the unsung heroes in the business. A lot of people have no idea what goes in behind
That's
the
right.
scenes, what editors do, what VFX artists do, and all the support people at post. It's not just editors and VFX. There's so many other roles and disciplines in there, technologists and data people and infrastructure people and sales people and marketing and admin and client services, and it goes on and on. I mean, how much is behind post? And so we got worried that maybe post production was getting lost in the conversation. So HPA, the great HPA board, we started having meetings about this. What can we do? How do we get the word out? So one of the first things we did was we issued an open letter. We issued that in August, and the open letter didn't take sides on the issue of the strike with the AMPTP and the guilds. But we said, hey, while there's these negotiations going on, there are a lot of people suffering here, and it might cause irreparable damage to the supply chain. And I think everyone should care about that because when you're ready to start making content again, you're going to need the post supply chain there, and it's being disrupted and damaged in a terrible way. So we issued that open letter that went viral.
I saw that.
That we were very happy with, yeah, with the reception of that, and then. I am also on the board of this other great organization called the Hollywood Partnership, which is not entertainment related so much as the city of Hollywood related. But I was able to get access to some of our elected public officials, and with my HPA hat on, we set up some meetings and discussions and really started to build awareness around post. And although we haven't received much meaningful support at this time to the businesses and individuals, we feel good about the fact that we've really put the post production and supply chain industry on their radars, and that we've been very outspoken about the needs to make sure that they're aware of of the massive amount of workers and companies in their jurisdictions that are under real duress. And we're still having ongoing discussions with them. We're very soon going to issue a second version of the open letter to say, okay, the strikes are over, but not really out of the woods for post. We still have a ways to go, and the world should know that there's going to be a lot of workers and companies that are in pain for a while longer. So that's a high level summary of what we've been doing to that end with the
Got it,
HPA.
got it. No, look, I mean that open letter did get very viral. I was seeing that forwarded to a host of folks, through that particular period. So can totally echo that. Thanks for sharing that particular perspective on the HPA intervention as well during the strikes. One aspect, going back to, we talked a little bit about Gen AI. And I know you are a huge enthusiast in AI and its the possibilities. You are interrogating how a host of these technologies could be applied to different parts of the supply chain. Again, would love to understand what's really a big driver for you right now. Why are you so enthusiastic? And which aspects are you most enthusiastic about in terms of the ability of AI to sort of really transform aspects of the industry?
Sure. So obviously, Gen AI took the world by storm, starting about a year ago when OpenAI was launched. And since then, it's been like a wildfire, I think almost across the world, really, in every industry. Um, Interestingly to me important about the impact that it's had in the minds of people in entertainment, because people started to see how certain applications could create these amazing images magically from a text prompt, and now videos can be created magically from a text prompt, and it goes on and on. I'm still amazed every day, and every week there's new updates to these tools that are just mind blowing. And I have immersed myself pretty deeply in it since the beginning of the year, and just try to educate myself. I realized very quickly how much I don't know, and I saw a lot of people that were very fearful about this technology and how they felt it might displace their roles or their businesses or machines taking over and all of those things. And I'm not usually somebody that kind of plays into fear. When I see something that really is so provocative like this and has provoked such reactions emotionally, I get very interested in it, and I realize there's I really need to educate myself more. So that's what I've done, and I think that's good for everybody to do right now, is just educate yourself, and so the more you learn about it, the more you'll understand. I think it's not as scary as it seems, and in fact, I think that we will all see the benefits of this technology. I'm in the camp that this is in some ways not unlike almost every other technological revolution throughout history, where there's fear at first, but then it's okay, and we adopt these things, and it becomes part of our tool set. Certainly with Gen AI, there's some things that we need to be careful about. But I predict that we are being careful about those. I think there's a lot of smart people that are looking at that, and now the government. And I predict that machines are not going to take over, and some of those fears, the things people are afraid of, won't actually happen. That's the sort of perspective that I have, and so I've been leaning into Gen AI and Gen AI tools in a way to find out how do we leverage them. So especially, and to answer your specific question on how we would apply them, when we think about a supply chain that's under duress, which this
Yeah,
is, we talked about the economic challenges that the world is in, and then of course our industry. And when you're in the supply chain, that means you're going to be under lots of economic challenge. There's going to be downward pressure on your business to reduce
yeah,
costs and just manage those economics
that's right.
carefully. And I think that all advanced software applications will play a big role in this, but also AI is a part of that. what I think the low hanging fruit, and I think that this
Hmm.
applies to every business in every industry, just about. Um, it's not, at least for entertainment, really looking so much at how Gen AI can help create or manipulate picture and sound. Yes, that's something we need to be aware of and figure out where we can incorporate. But actually, I think the real low hanging fruit is where can Gen AI help you with all the non sexy stuff? With finance, with HR, with legal, with data management, with cybersecurity, with QC and quality control. I think that that's really where Gen AI and and machine learning and natural language processing and all of these AI technologies will really help pretty much every business and every individual in our personal lives. So um, again, that's a high level kind of answer, but that's where my head has been, and I've been endlessly fascinated by what these tools are doing, what they're capable of, and how they can be applied. And I've been looking very closely at those, and so have many of my colleagues with the HPA.
Fascinating. And look, I mean, I totally echo the that sentiment, which is that at one level, if there are certain kinds of AI technologies that are able to bring in efficiencies, but on the other side, certain other kinds of applications are able to expand horizons. And we're seeing, at Vitrina, we are tracking, different aspects of the supply chain which are now getting AI aided or AI powered or AI enabled. And we're seeing, of course, aspects like VFX and sound. We are seeing some efficiency gains that companies are trying to apply. We are also seeing that in localization in a big way. And localization is an interesting one because there are certain secondary, tertiary languages or secondary, tertiary content that doesn't really get localized. But if it could, it would unlock new sort of businesses or new revenue potential, new audiences perhaps. And I think that really is an exciting aspect, even from Vitrina's standpoint of looking at different aspects of the supply chain and where the applications of AI is coming in from really smart, innovative companies who are really sort of questioning the traditional ways of doing things and enhancing that to along with some of this new tech. So yeah, I totally echo that sentiment. And then again, Seth, I wanted to sort of thank you very much for the time today. We actually covered a lot of ground. I think the most critical one that I was absolutely wanting to get as a viewpoint for our members was the strikes, and as we come out of the strikes. One last question before I let you go was really about your outlook on 2024. What are you telling your teams? What's been the big theme of discussion at HPA? Whatever that you can share relating to a 2024 outlook. I know that some of these productions will typically take that much time to ramp up, but so there is going to be a slow start to 2024, but eventually would love to get an understanding of where you see the year going.
It's a great question. 2024 is very unique. There's a lot of uncertainty in 2024, more than makes us comfortable. We do see a ramp up, production spinning up. It's more difficult to forecast exactly what that looks like and when. It's the really one of the most challenging times maybe the most challenging time. Um, the pandemic shutdown was pretty tough to
Yeah.
forecast as well, but it's still yet again a very difficult time to forecast for your business. When you're running companies, you need to depend on good forecasts, and that's really tough. Q1, Q2, not really sure. We think by Q3 things will feel much better in terms of volume. Um, um, but in the meantime, I think it's important for us to really think about the fundamental transformative change that's happening in our business. Think about how to run companies more efficiently. Think about how roles are changing. Obviously, AI and other advanced software applications that are focused on automation um, will displace human tasks. But that doesn't mean it displaces the human. So I think it's important for us to focus on how the human roles change, and they will. And so we're focused on that in a significant way. And again, just overall trying to be the best partners to our studio customers who are experiencing their own challenges. And so I think as a supply chain supplier of services and solutions and technology, I think it's really important time for us to partner more closely with our studio customers and to help them achieve some of the goals that they have and meet some of the challenges that they're having. So that's what we're focused on right now as a with my post production hat on, but then also with our HPA hat on. We're going to be really leaning into helping the members of the supply chain, including suppliers and the studios and software manufacturers and all stakeholders in helping meet some of these challenges. It will be a very challenging year because of the uncertainty, but I think also full of opportunity if you know, a try to understand how to meet some of the demands of the supply chain, and B, take action on that. If you take some action and you place some bets, I think you're in a much better position, and you've de-risked yourself pretty
Fantastic,
wisely.
fantastic. No, that absolutely sounds like how the year is going to progress. And again, Seth, just want to thank you from Vitrina and the Vitrina community for your time today. This was wonderful and lots of insights to unpack here. But I really want to thank you for your time today.
Atul, thank you so much. So many great questions, and this has been a pleasure. I really appreciate